Hello, everyone.
Hey, welcome back to Pacecast. We had a bit of a break last week because of some internet issues. Unfortunately, it might not be 100% stable this week, but yeah, let's see how we get on. Um, just a quick introduction. My name is Tijs. I'm from NJRC, and on the other side of the screen we have James from RC Boss, and of course this channel Pace. So this is our live podcast every week, or we try to do it every week at least, all about RC drifting. Just as always, we have some RC drifting news, a bit of a topic to talk about and to discuss, and we also had a lot of stuff sent in by you guys over the last 2 weeks, all about the D110 Worlds and Euros, and what the future holds for the RC Drifting World Championships. So that's what we'll be talking about today. And I'm really looking forward to all of your suggestions. So feel free to join in the chat. I see there's already quite a few people joining in even before we actually went live. So that's really good. I hope you're all excited to see what we're talking about this week. And yeah, let's see how we get on. Join in, send in your comments, your questions, your suggestions. If you have any wild and crazy ideas about what the RC Drifting World Championships or any other major events that gets us all together should look like, just send it in. Um, uh, yeah, I'll be happy to see all of your suggestions.
I guess we should probably just start with the current potential technical issue. You should let us know if we've got some problems, chat, because
Yeah,
unfortunately my internet wasn't working last week and it's been fixed since Thursday. But when we've just gone live now, all of a sudden the stream doesn't appear stable to me. So if it's all looking good, that's great. But the software is telling me that it's having problems. So if you can't hear us or you can't see us, let me know and I'll see if we can do something. But
yeah.
unfortunately, I think we just have to live with it.
Either in the live chat or just send us a quick message on Facebook or something.
Yeah.
If the live chat even cuts out, then
I guess we should probably start with the first bit of news related to the Racecast, which is this is going to be the last week for the summer.
Yes.
We're basically going to stop, call this the end of Series 1 or Season 1, and we're going to pick it up again at the end of the summer because I've got a baby coming in a couple of months or 6 weeks, and I've also got a lot going on to prepare for that, so I need to take a little bit of a break. And also with the summer being traditionally the quiet time for the hobby anyway, it's probably good timing to do that. But the plan is we're going to pick it up end of September, something like that, end of summer at least, and we'll work it out and announce it obviously in advance. So yeah, I think we've got some skips unfortunately in the stream. But is it watchable or is it not watchable?
If they can even hear that question.
Yes. Because what we could do is we could maybe stop the stream and just record it and upload it later is the other option we have, which is not obviously what we want to do, but it is an option. Thanks, man. But yeah, so anyway, we're going to take a little break over the summer. It won't be too long, a couple of months, something like that, and we'll work it out and get back when we can. But yeah, moving on to our first topic for the week. Guess we'll start straight in with the Rev the Arms.
Yes, they keep bringing us new stuff. It's amazing at the pace they're releasing new products. I'm sure they had some of this available already a while ago, and they're sort of like slowly releasing it one by one. But
sure.
yeah, they're definitely keeping up the hype.
Yeah, man, and it's good to see actually because one of the things I like about the material they've chosen, which they call POM, it's also known as acetal, and what's the brand name? Is Duracon or something? I think as well is another one. It's a really good material for arms actually because it's very rigid, but with just a hint of flex. It's really good for getting traction. It's really durable. It's lightweight. It's cheap. It's kind of a really good material for arms because it means, in the instance with the Rev D arms, you've actually got 3 different sizes that they're offering to suit different setups, different camber gain, that kind of thing, which you can see there. And it just makes it really easy because it makes them cheap enough that you can just buy all of them. You can have one set of each in your pit box ready to go. So you just tweak things.
And it just looks very clean as well. The adjustable arms, they're cool, but always screws, gaps, spacers.
Bit of weight.
It's always a bit much.
Yeah. So you can see here they've got 45, 48, and 51 mil. So If I remember right, 48 is stock on a YD2, I think. Someone will correct me on that. I'm sure I'm wrong, but it's somewhere around there anyway. So they've basically got either standard or around standard, and then smaller and wider. But yeah, it's kind of good to see, and I think they're for what they are, they're pretty good looking. It's quite difficult to make plastic arms look good because you can't put too much detail in them or anything like that. But I think, yeah, I think they look kind of cool. I don't think there's a price available on them yet.
Seems to be the thing with all of the new RFD stuff.
Yeah, I mean we've got they're delivering end of June, so any day, I guess. But yeah, I think that's kind of cool to see, and it's a good product for them to get more products out in the market, get some income coming in, so they can start developing the other stuff a bit more as well. So.
It's surprising to me that no one else has been using these kind of materials for any of the suspension parts.
Well, they have top line, barrel.
Top line is, I think, the only one that I really know about.
I think there's a few. I think they're mostly produced either by Top Line or have some connection to Top Line. The brands that I've seen, but I've had barrel arms for like 6 years or something like that. And it's just a really good material. I mean, it's the kind of material that, like all plastics, you can if you strip a thread, it's done. But you can maybe fix it. It's not necessarily guaranteed, but maybe you can. And if you have too many crashes, you'll end up stretching the holes for the pins and things like that. But they're cheap and easy. They can't expect too much from them. But yeah, I'm quite happy with them. I think they'll be good options for everyone that's running anything YD2 based for sure, and probably some other options as well.
Especially if you play around with the suspension mounts too, you can make almost infinite combinations of different length arms and different length suspension.
Yeah, I mean, it's been
tweak your roll center.
It's been a couple of years. I think it's been quite popular in Japan to run short arms and wide suspension mounts. Was it the EX YD2 was the first to do that? I forget which one did it, but also
I think so. Yeah, EX2 maybe.
For a couple of years on the trips to Japan that I've been on, I've seen guys running super wide suspension mounts on Garms, and baculars, and pretty much everything. And now, obviously, with the Garm 2, they've gone wider suspension mounts and narrower or shorter arms. So it's kind of a trendy thing. It's a trend that's stuck around, if we put it that way. But it's very cool.
I saw some of the Galm 2s already in people's hands, so I think they're released now, right? We talked about it a couple of weeks back already.
Yeah. The entry level version has been available for a couple of weeks, and the full option part version has also been available. And then on Friday, the 10th anniversary version was shipped, and the international ones were shipped today. So I got my tracking number this morning.
Ooh, exciting. So, unfortunately, we'd have to wait till season 2 to see it. But
well, I'll probably do a live stream build, I think.
Perfect.
Because, yeah, I find building chassis on my own a bit boring. I like to build them at a track or with other people around. Yeah, I like to do it with a bit of interaction with people. But yeah, looking forward to it. Unfortunately, it's been shipped with the EMS, so who knows how long it's going to be until it arrives.
EMS from Japan is not great at the moment. So
EOS to the UK is okay. It's when it gets to the UK and sits for a month and does nothing in customs. That's the bad bit.
Oh wow! Oh, that's crazy. Then again, I'm getting all my stuff with surface mail from Japan, so it's 2 months at least.
I was expecting it via FedEx, but unfortunately, it's gone EMS. So yeah, I would have had it by the weekend otherwise. Right, moving on. We've also got another new body from MST.
It's they keep ramping up with their production, but I haven't really seen many of them.
You say production,
released,
let's say design.
Design, yeah.
I haven't seen any of the bodies yet, but they're
with
showing
their releases,
showing us ideas at least.
Yeah, because I'm still waiting to see the Alpine that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
I did see a couple prototypes of the MX-5, and now here's a Lamborghini, another new chassis, or body shell, not super drift related. Then again, we have Matt Mike and a few others that are drifting the supercars.
I think it gets when you see a lot of the traditional drift bodies for a long time. Sometimes it's cool to see somebody with a supercar. I can't remember where it was. I went to a track overseas sometime, and there was like 4 or 5 guys running Ferrari 599s, and it was super cool because they just looked amazing. And it was like team bodies, but they all had Ferraris, so it's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, I hope this one comes with the light buckets and stuff, and then I want someone to go completely crazy and do the Japanese style with this body shell.
Yes. I think if anyone remembers the video I shared on Facebook from a couple of years ago with an Aventador with the full strobe lights on everything, that was pretty ridiculous and one of the weirdest things I've ever seen on the road.
Strobe lights, holographic wrap, everything.
Yeah,
that would be
full on crazy. It had so many strobe lights that I couldn't tell what it was until I was literally next to it, and we drove up and overtook the car from like half a mile away, and it was literally I had to be in the lane next to it to see what it was because I couldn't see past the lights.
That's crazy.
But yeah, I think this one looks kind of cool. It looks pretty badass. I mean, it's kind of, we were talking before, we're not sure if it's based on the Super Trofeo Gallardo or if it's based on a GT version or a mix of two or an adapted version of something else.
Looks like a bit of a mix of two, right? Because the diffuser definitely is the Super Trofeo, but then the spoiler,
yeah,
I don't think it is. But maybe it's sort of what Phil Morrison has been doing, sort of a GT car for the road, kind of style, which is cool.
I think it's pretty cool. I mean, it's probably not a body I'm going to end up with, but I do think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And then I suppose we can also move on to again we got a release date for this one. I think we do, don't we? Fourth quarter, so some time off, but it's pretty cool. Next up, got something chassis. Interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
So this is the RC Oahu Trigger 2, I think is the
Trigger 2, yeah. It does only say Trigger on the chassis itself, but it looks like the Trigger 2, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Or they say it's the Trigger 2, yeah. And it's super interesting. I haven't seen, do we have a full chassis picture or just the close-ups?
No, it's
just the close-ups, right?
Just a few little snippets of detail, but it looks
it's hinting at something super interesting at least.
Yeah, I mean it depends how well put together it's going to be, I think. But it's somebody doing something different, which is kind of cool. I mean, that steering crank system is kind of a bit like a Revel. But kind of their own version. And
a lot of stuff is kind of like the Revel, where you have all of the adjustable aluminium.
Yeah, you can see the upper arms are on a slider to adjust your caster, which is kind of cool. But then, like, how is that all mounted and how rigid is that? Is the kind of final question, really. Is it going to flex a bit, which is not going to be too good? And I'm not liking the look of the C clips on there to hold the upper arms on. That looks a bit too much like something I'm going to ping across the room when I'm working on it. But
it's one of the first comments I saw when these pictures were posted. Someone just said C clips ! Yeah, it's a bit old school, but it does look cool.
It looks interesting. Like, this reminds me of a Bianca. It reminds me a lot of a Bianca because kind of somebody working out how to do stuff that maybe, with more time and money they could find a better solution for, but they're doing it their own way and it looks kind of cool. It's going to look chunky as hell and maybe weigh a ton, but it's kind of cool. And I mean, I'm assuming this is a YD2 conversion, you'd think. But there's literally no information.
We don't really have any pictures of the rear end, I think, right? It's just the front end.
I mean, they're the 3 pictures I've got.
Yeah. So it might just well be a conversion. Maybe not. Who knows? But at least the front end looks super interesting. Aluminium decks too, which is a bit out there.
It's a bit old school. But kind of cool. I like them. They're not necessarily the best for competition, but for fun driving. I think RC Oahu's going to be more of a fun chassis than a competition chassis for sure, just based on the circuit.
Might be more in terms of realistic driving with a bit more roll and more
maybe.
diving.
And it looks like possibly that's a high mount battery post that I see at the top. I don't even know. It could be something else entirely, quite likely as well. But it's cool to see somebody small having a go at making a chassis. That's always a good thing.
Something that's not a YD2 or a RMX or a Gone.
I mean,
a bit more different.
It might be a YD2 conversion, but from the looks of it, you're not going to need a lot from the YD2. But yeah, I think it's kind of cool. On to probably something that's going to be a bit more popular.
Yeah, definitely.
The D5, which they've been teasing for what feels like 2 or 3 years now.
It's been a while. I think somewhere mid last year or something, we saw the first renders or first design pictures of the 3 racing, what's probably called Sakura D5 or D5S.
To fit with their traditional naming scheme.
Yeah. And it's interesting for sure. Definitely at the price level. I think I saw somewhere posted that it's going to be $77 for a kit.
which is pretty
Probably it's going to
ridiculous.
be a little bit more when it actually hits the shops, but it's still going to be super cheap compared
Yeah,
to other chassis.
and it's the
As
kind
is
of thing
tradition.
that there's going to be a million of them everywhere. There's going to be a lot of guys getting these for their first chassis, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Whether it works well, I'm sure it'll be half decent because kind of they've done a lot of chassis in the past. They know what they're doing, but they seem to sort of crammed a load of ideas into this. It seems to be sort of a mishmash of lots of other chassis. There's
They've been
definitely
paying attention to the trends, that's for sure.
yeah.
It has a lot of options, and it has IFS. It has in this case a rear motor,
Yeah.
shaft drive. It has a bunch of stuff on there, even though everything is plastic or at least a minimum amount of aluminium. There's a lot of stuff on here, and it definitely has potential to be pretty good chassis once it's actually set up. It's usually been one of the major letdowns of the Sakuras is the out of the box setup, but with a bit of tweaking, we've seen some of the D4s run really, really well.
Yeah.
And I know this especially has been very popular in Thailand and Taiwan and some parts of Asia where all you see is just 3 racing chassis everywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a funny little thing.
As chat is quite rightly pointing out, this is the entry level version. Obviously, it's $77. There will probably be another version that has a few more parts on it. And I also, as Lucas pointed out, there's also a center motor mounted version that we saw as well. I didn't realize that was also going to be called a D5. I thought that was a different chassis entirely, but yeah, it's interesting. And I mean, the thing is the price is the reason this is going to sell. Whether the quality is good, we won't know until anyone has one. Whether the out-of-box setup is good, we won't know until everybody has them. But it has the potential to be very popular. It has the potential to be pretty good as well. And what they'll probably end up doing is releasing pop-up parts for this to take it all the way up to be full option aluminium, like they did with the D4 and the D3.
Yeah. Have you seen the design of the rear arms? Because that's completely different to anything.
Yeah, I did. It's inserts from the look of it.
Yeah, it's 2
I've seen this
fiberglass
before.
plates.
Where have I seen this before? I've seen it with carbon fiber plates and then like inboard and outboard parts that you screw in. I can't remember. Is it automatics maybe, or
it's the
somebody did it?
It's the express drift chassis that has the carbon fiber arms as well, but they have like these pillow balls on the inside of the chassis. But like this, where it's plastic parts sandwiched in between 2 plates, I haven't seen yet, which I thought was pretty interesting. Gives it a lot of options for modifying for sure.
Yeah, definitely, and pretty easy to make custom arms.
Yeah, and I think one of the best things with the 3 racing chassis has been that it really brings in a lot of new people into the hobby.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
of its price point. So maybe it's not the chassis people stick with, but it's definitely one.
Yeah, it's cheap enough to get people to get in, give the hobby a go, and then maybe after a while they end up switching to something else, or keeping this as a second chassis or whatever.
I started my rear-wheel drive thing with D4 as well, just because I wanted to give it a try. And then after a certain while, I was like, let me get something better and converted my RMX. But it did get me going, and it did actually do pretty okay.
Yeah,
especially for a beginner.
No, it looks interesting. I mean, like I say, it looks a bit of a sort of mishmash where they've taken a look at what other people have done and put everything into this, which that's kind of what people were expecting. I think what I can't see is how many options you've got. Whether this is just what you can do, or whether it can be tweaked and you've got different motor positions and stuff. But it looks like a good base for sure, and it looks like something where there could be a lot of room to turn this into something quite promising, I think. And especially the price. It's cheap enough that people can take a punt and just get one just for the sake of it, just for something to build up and have some fun with. It's not it's cheap enough that it's not a big commitment for a lot of people. And if somebody wants a second chassis to try some crazy ideas out, this is probably the cheapest way they'll be able to do it realistically.
I think that's one of the best reasons to get one of the Sakuras, just because it's cheap. You can just have a go, play around with it, do whatever you want with it. If you don't like it, you can always put it as a display chassis on your shelf.
Yep.
or sell it to someone else, or maybe even give it to someone else. Since
Yeah, I
it's
mean, in reality, it's not that much more expensive than the dedicated display chassis that people sell,
yeah,
which is a bit
exactly.
crazy to think. All these individual parts, and I don't know if it's going to come with wheels and tires, but like, if it doesn't, it's not. It's still a very fair price.
Yeah, no one cares.
Yeah,
You're probably gonna swap them out for something you want for your track anyway.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
What do you think about the body mounts?
Where are they?
Just as a
There.
quick sidetrack,
They're pretty ugly.
they look like
Um,
waffles to me.
they look like it looks like upside down frying pans,
Oh yeah, definitely.
but
Because they have this pattern on the top that makes me
yeah,
really
yeah,
think of waffles.
but they I'm sure they work well, and I would be surprised if they were included, but also maybe not surprised because that's quite a cool thing to
It did
include.
say in the description that it was included
Okay,
in the
that's
kit.
a
Yeah,
that's a
it
cool
was
thing to
coming with
include for
magnet body
sure.
mounts. Yeah, it's
Um,
something a lot of people
Assuming
want
they
anyway.
work well enough, that's a really cool thing to include for sure because everybody wants magnet mounts these days.
Yeah,
Personally, I still like to run posts at one end, but that's just because I crash. I don't like
if,
I don't like
if
the body coming off.
competition
Which
driving body posts for sure, but for anything else, this
yeah,
actually this definitely looks better than posts sticking out of the front or the rear window. Yeah,
especially when you take a lot of time and make your own bodies look very nice, you don't want to be drilling holes and having stuff hanging out.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I guess on that note, we can kind of move on to an interesting update on the rules from RCDC,
Yeah,
which should be really no surprise to anyone. The one of the rules they've introduced is that you get a 0 point score for a run if your tires or body come off. And that's probably because last year in November when we were there was a few guys that there's one guy that managed to catch a wing, I think, on one of the boards, and the body just stuck midair and floated, and his car drove away with no body on it.
wow.
And it was very embarrassing for him, with everybody laughing at him. But yeah, so now at that point he got to continue the run and get a score, whereas now they're saying that's a 0. And also if your tire falls off, which I also will assume is wheel as well. But yeah,
That might just be translation.
yeah, and I mean the rules that I've got, they're basically from Kondo's blog. So he's written them very loosely. They're not from the official
Yeah.
rule book because it hasn't been officially updated as far as I could see when I looked yesterday.
It's funny because that's a rule that we've had in D110, for example, for quite a while. Like
Yep.
if you're losing any body parts or something like that,
Yep.
then that's a 0.
Well, there was a rule I think that said like if a spoiler comes off, it's a 0. But yeah, I mean that's the basic one. The main one that's a bit more interesting for me is that they've raised the weight limit. Oh, sorry, lowered the weight limit even. So basically, they're now setting it. So I'll read this and make sure I've got it right. Yeah, so now it's 950 grams.
And that's total or just
That's
on the
rear axle weight is the way they do it.
Rear axle weight. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that basically it's good because it allows people to go for the lightweight thing, but it limits them because it basically means that they have to have a bit more front weight, realistically.
Yeah.
Instead of piling everything on the axle. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those rules. I think there was just a couple of people in the competition last year that were starting to take the mick. They weren't quite there, but the direction they're heading is a direction that people don't want to see.
It seems like some of the rules they're introducing now are sort of to get all of the extremes out of the competition to sort of level the playing field for anyone entering.
Yeah,
But it's not those who've spent a ridiculous amount of time either lightening their chassis or maybe the next rule that's going to come up is another one like that.
yeah.
It sort of
I mean,
levels the playing field for every man, basically.
it's a reasonably small change. They've gone from 1,100 grams to 950, and it, like I say, it's just to sort of, it's as much I think to give people a nudge and say like enough, like stop going down this road. That's a bit too much for now. But there'll still be people that'll be on that limit, which is still crazy. Somebody's got 950 grams on the rear. They're probably going to have still 70% rear weight, if not more. The other rule that's very interesting, and I think for the most part is a very good rule, is that there's no prototype parts or self-made parts allowed in the competition.
This
Um,
one really surprised me because it's
yeah,
like prototype parts or self-made. I mean, it's kind of the same, really. Basically, just means that it's not available to anyone else.
yeah. Well, I mean,
Uh,
I've competed in the RCDC competition with prototype parts before, and so have the Yokomo drivers and the Rev D drivers and the other Overdose drivers, upline drivers. If
yeah,
you're a team driver, you get access to parts that are incoming, and sometimes, if they're close enough, there's mock-ups or spares or test parts available for you to try. But I think it's fair. I think it's a good idea. I mean, we saw it at the Worlds with the YD2 when that came out, and then with option parts
multiple
that
versions of it too.
yeah, with option parts that were tested out in subsequent years, which nobody else could use. So the guys that were using them had an advantage because they could do something that nobody else could with that chassis. So I think it's a good rule. I think it's a very fair rule that brings or takes away some advantage from team drivers. And yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in complete agreement. I think if I was setting up a competition, definitely something I'd be looking to implement myself, I think.
I kind of wonder what the definition of prototype or self-made is, because for example, if you would make something yourself and then make a couple and make it available, but at a ridiculous price that no one wants to buy it, uh,
Yeah, I
that
think
might be the way to cheat the system.
I
But
think the benefit of this being the Japanese rules is people will respect the rules, and people won't take the piss, and if they do, they will just be told that they're taking the piss and it's not going to pass.
yeah,
So I think it's quite good. Generally, nobody really disputes the rules. I've seen a couple of protests in competition, but the competition is set up. For those that don't know, in RCDC, if you're not happy with the judge's decision, you can file an official protest, and it costs you about €60 if I remember right. And you have to fill in a form, enclose some money. It might be slightly less than that, but it's a reasonable amount of money. And if the judges are found to be wrong using replays, then you're refunded your money and the decision will be overturned, or the run will happen again, or whatever needs to happen to make it work. And if you're found to not be, or if it's not found in your favour, then you don't get your money back and you are out of the competition, if I remember right.
wow.
But then people don't, you're not going to protest the decision that when you're still in the competition, it's going to be the decision that gets you kicked out. So yeah, they're very fair with the rules. I've seen it happen a few times, and so far the judges haven't been wrong because they've already used the replay to make their decision. So yeah, it's mostly been somebody with an ego that's disappointed in themselves, that's just hoping they can get another go.
It does give people a fair chance, but crazy. I didn't know this rule existed. So
Yes.
I think we're also talking about the RCDC stuff because it's, I think, the one thing that's sort of the closest to a sanctioning body in RC drifting that there is right now in the world.
Yeah.
That sort of makes some of the rule changes relevant. And also, most of these rules and changes are sort of made in collaboration between many of the different brands, if I'm right.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the RCDC, for those that don't know, is made up of a committee or a sort of board that comprises of people from most of the major companies and track owners and dedicated people within the scene, and judges and everything like that along those lines as well. And basically, every major company in Japan sponsors RCDC. The sponsorship is very fair pricing. It's very cheap, but the idea is that they then have some money to put on competitions that cost a huge amount of money. I mean, the production values of RCDC events is far higher than anything I've seen drifting before. They spend a lot of money to get the venue that they're using so that it's well seen. It's for all of the years apart from one, it's been held at Nagoya Airport. So literally anyone who's getting a flight out over that entire weekend comes to watch. And they also have money available to buy nice trophies, good carpet. They pay judges to judge. They pay their staff who dedicate their time. And it's one of those things where they really put the money back in. Nobody's taking any money out of it. People get expenses for trips and things like that, but nobody is profiting from it. So every penny that goes into it is there to make future competitions and events for everyone to enjoy. So yeah, it's a really good system. We do have one more bit of news that I unfortunately didn't prepare for, so you're going to have to watch me very jankily add some images because I basically have had lots of technical issues that I've been trying to overcome. But we have got...
I saw this one this afternoon. I'm sorry for not putting it in the document.
It just slipped my mind, which is crazy because I actually ended up ordering one today, so I should have remembered.
Oh, really?
Yes. And of course, we're talking about the new Overdose livery.
There we go.
There we go. Well, maybe
a little bit of behind the scenes on how the stream is set up.
Yeah. I should have remembered this. Like I say, I ordered one myself today. I saw this at RCDC last year, and this has actually always been my favourite livery they've put on the car, to be perfectly honest. Not only because we sponsor it as RC Boss, but because I think it's a badass livery, and I think the car looks amazing. So I've got one of the bodies on order and one of the sticker sets on order for myself for when I mess up the first one.
So this is the Overdose JZX 100. Is it a Mark II? It is a Mark II, right?
Yes, it's a Mark II, yeah.
So the Mark II body shell with the 2019 Formula Drift Japan.
Yes.
Round 3 livery on it, which is new.
And
the livery.
I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but the sticker set is known as the Hayakushiki Rokuguki sticker set, which, forgive me for destroying, but yeah, they look amazing. They use really high quality stickers on the Overdose liveries, and this is actually even better than the previous ones. Yodo's a bit obsessive about getting the perfect stickers for his liveries, so they actually have changed the colours a little bit to make it look better. But technically, it's not a colour match for the old one, for the full scale one. Like all the others have been, they've tweaked this to make it a bit more bold and bright, but it does look better for it in person.
A bit more exaggerated, I think, for so it sort of works at this scale.
Yeah, and the stickers themselves look, I'm told, are much easier to put on this time because of the way they've separated them and split them.
Which is important because this is pretty much a full wrap livery, right?
Yes, I think this one actually is a full wrap livery.
The
last one, there was a couple of points that didn't get covered by the stickers. So you basically needed to paint a body for, a little gap like this on the front bumper and a little bit like this at the back. But this one, I wouldn't bet my life on it, but I believe this one is also full wrap, so you don't even need any paint on the body. But I could be wrong on that, which is helpful because I messed up one of the last ones, so I can just reuse that body, pull those stickers off, and stick this on.
Yeah, so then it's good that they sell the sticker set separately, because I think the body is pretty much unchanged, or not?
No, the body hasn't changed.
It looks similar.
It's exactly the same body.
Yeah. So then, if you have an old one, a painted one, or a second-hand one, just slap the new sticker set on it, and you have a brand new, fresh body shell, basically.
Yeah, and also the T7R wheels are really easy to paint. This is probably the exact car that I saw, which is the one Yodo prepared for RCDC last year. And I saw how good the wheels looked, and I said, I need some tips. How did you paint your wheels? Because they look amazing. And he was like, sprayed them. Yeah, okay. What magic paint did you use? He's like, Tamiya TS paint. Okay. And how did you prepare it? I didn't. Literally just got a wheel, sprayed it, and they looked absolutely amazing. They looked like he'd spent ages like sanding them and keying it and getting it perfect, and then airbrushing them with custom magic paint or something. And it literally, he was like, it took me 2 minutes. I was rushing. Okay. But yeah, I think it looks wicked. I can't wait to get one. Hopefully I don't mess this one up. I've definitely messed up the last one.
Well, no paint to mess up, at least. Just
paint I can do. It's the stickers. It's the big stickers. I'm not steady enough.
Make sure you have a hairdryer to sort of ease it on. And, but it definitely looks cool. These graphics are always super wild.
Yes, they are. I'm going to also just jankily add another one so we can see the back, because I like the back of this one. So let's check this in here. And I think it looks badass. And the cut bumper is also a bit of a sort of Formula D trend as well, that I think a lot of people will do this. I think this will always look better, because I don't know if you're going to get enough sticker to cover the bumper as well. I would imagine not. And I think the idea is that you're making it as a replica. So yeah, this to me looks badass. I don't know what chat thinks, but I'm a big fan of this, regardless of the fact that I'm a team driver and I sponsor the team. But yeah, I can't wait to get one. It's going to be a little while to get it, unfortunately. Holding off for some future products that are coming out, because shipping a body, as everybody knows, is quite expensive.
I wonder what it'll do to the weight if you don't have any paint. Because normally on a full size car you would wrap it instead of paint it because it saves a bit of weight. Then again, maybe stickers on an RC car are maybe
I think
heavier than
the stickers are very thick and strong, so I'd imagine they probably weigh the same, if not more, than paint. But like, it's not. I think it's not going to make enough of a difference either way. I think if you pick up this body when it's got the stickers on, you're not going to be able to tell if it's the same as or less than a painted version.
At least you have the rear bumper cut off to save you a couple grams.
Yes, yeah. But then you're going to put a spoiler on, because you've got to put a spoiler on it.
You do, yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool. I have also requested that Overdose in the future release their new liveries at the start of the year to go with that year, rather than the following year, which is how they've traditionally done it. And they've told me they will do that from next year. Hopefully they actually do.
So soon maybe you'll see a new one.
Yes, and last janky image ad that I'll do is just to show you sticker set.
Yeah. Yeah, it is pretty much full wrap, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the front bumper, because I don't know if there's anything in there for the front bumper. Maybe you're supposed to paint it white or something, but
let's see. Yeah, I think maybe, but there's also some parts we can't see because of the color. So I think maybe the part next to the bonnet, the left, is probably for the front bumper. But yeah, I don't know. We'll work it out. But I think it's also pretty cool that they, or kind of strange that they don't print the sponsor logos.
It might just be for alignment reasons, or maybe to sort of change it up if you want to.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's probably so that people can put their own sponsor logos on, or leave some off if they don't want certain brands on there. I'm sure there's some people that won't want to put an RC Boss logo on if they're, Yida drivers or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of it's a smart way of doing it, but for me, with my wonky eyes and bad placement skills, I'd much rather have them put the stickers on so they're at least all in line. But that's probably just me and my bad body making.
Let us know how it goes once it comes in. Show us some result pictures.
Yes, we will. We will definitely at some point. I'll either show you the good results or the disaster. The pile in the corner that's going to get left.
Just get a spare sticker set and you're all good.
I already did. I have to, man.
Yeah.
So I should have two.
All right.
Yeah. So I guess we can probably move on to our main topic for tonight.
Yes. So we're talking about the future of the RC Drifting World Championships, which is quite an interesting topic, and I think a lot of people have a lot of ideas on how it should look, or who should organize it, or where it should be, or what the rules should be. Do you have any opening thoughts on it already? Like, do you want to share your vision of what the World Championships should look like, or what to do with it?
I'll get to that in just a second. If anyone in chat has any comments, now's the time to have a think and fire some out. I'll get to those in just a bit. But yeah, I mean, my first thoughts on it is I think it's good that we're going to have a little break. Even if there was a Worlds planned for this year, we wouldn't have had it because of what's been going on. So I think it's kind of good to take a year out. And if we're going to have if there's going to be changes, it's good to give people time to think about it and think about what they're missing, and think about the stuff they're not missing, and think about past years. As we've been doing, we've been looking back over the past few weeks and considering the Worlds and thinking about it. And for me, the number one thing I'd like to see in any future competition is a solid rule book, like RCDC has, where the judging criteria is explained many months before the actual competition, and people are accountable for their scores that they submit as judges, and also drivers can see where they made mistakes or didn't make mistakes or whatever it is, whichever way it goes. For me, I think judging is a very hard thing, as we've talked about before, and getting judges aligned is incredibly difficult, because if you sit three guys down and explain the same thing to them, you're going to probably get three different interpretations of the words that you use, particularly when maybe English, the instructions are given in English, and English isn't somebody's first language. When I judged the IFMA World Cup, I had to get a license and I had to do a full day's training course explaining how their judging system worked with a test. And I don't think that's necessarily feasible for now within Europe. It's quite a big challenge to organise the event, but to put the infrastructure in place is a big deal. I think, you know, for somebody to be responsible purely for judging the judges and setting up criteria without having the competition in place is very tricky. But at the same time, it's even harder to start the competition and then introduce that later on. So it's one of those things where it's kind of a chicken and egg situation where you've got to do one before the other if you're going to go down that road. I don't know. What about you? What's the sort of what's your thoughts anyway?
Yeah, it's funny because we posted a sort of an announcement of this topic on Facebook about 2 weeks ago, and you know, pretty much every response that I saw so far has been about specific details. So judging rules, you know, maybe different classes and whatnot. But you know, my thoughts were actually that the entire format maybe should look different.
Yeah.
I don't know if we should get into that already, but or maybe stick to some of the judging details and stuff at first. Because honestly, I think there's also a lot to gain there. Just like you say, you know, maybe it needs to be set up a bit more professionally, where indeed the rule book is very clear. It's elaborate enough to sort of get rid of any gray areas, or you know, use a wording that's super clear, almost black and white on what's possible, what's not, where to gain points, where to lose some, and also I feel a lot for different classes to have, you know, maybe not 300 people trying to get to the same first position, because yeah, I don't know if it's useful for someone or very fun for someone to try your best, have a decent score, and still end up in 100th position or something. I don't know if that's really what we're aiming for, especially if it's a world championship. I think that's what puts a lot of pressure on having a good rule book, having, you know, a well set up competition, having really good judges. Because if you're calling something a world championship, you want it to be world championship
Yeah.
level, and you want it to be serious. And I don't think having this many battles and this many people trying to qualify, uh, you know, makes it a world championship. I think you can do that earlier.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I also think would probably benefit is just, and it sort of was the case for the Worlds, but the way RCDC works is there's 17 qualifying events to get to the final, and you have to finish top 8, I think, in any of those 17 qualifiers to reach the finals. I actually would like to see every country that enters have a qualifying event or championship or whatever, so you are getting the best drivers from that country, not just the guys who signed up first.
Yeah.
Or the guys who have the money to go. Like, I think we've done it in the UK, and I know there's other countries that have qualifying events. But a lot of the guys that go to those events have no intention of making it to the, or some of the guys that go to those events have no intention of making it to the actual competition. They just want to go and see how they can do. And I would like to see it be the best of the best and less people. I mean, I don't think 300 drivers benefits anybody, because it just makes the competition super long, tires out the judges, tires out the audience, tires out people watching the stream. Like, nobody wants to watch 1 week's worth of drifting solid. I think it would be better if the competition was stripped down a bit. I don't know a number. It would depend on how much interest there was. But even if it was a top 64, but everyone that was there was, you know, one of the top 4 guys from their country or something like that. Because I think you'd still get all the other guys wanting to come and enjoy the event, and also the party side of things and meeting up with friends and all of that. I think it could be cool if it was open to everybody. But I think, you know, having a guy that's drifted for 2 months being in the World Championships is not really what you need. You know, no offense to the guys that have gone super early in their RC drifting career, but there's guys that have, you know, stood up in competition in a World Championships when they've been drifting less than 2 or 3 months, and they're not going to win. They're taking a spot from somebody who might stand a chance. And even if it was limited to 20 drivers per country, well, maybe there's 30 drivers from Germany that are good enough to go, and I don't know, another country that I can't think of doesn't have 30 drivers, but they fill it out with new guys, friends, family, whatever. And I think it's better that you just keep it to the absolute top standard. And I think it should be. I'd like it if it became something where only the top guys were interested, not to make it elitist, but just to make it the best possible competition that you could have, and the highest standard of driving.
Yeah, maybe like local competitions could also end up being the qualifier for the Worlds. I think that would make sense. That
definitely.
For the D110 Worlds, it's been like that in a couple countries where they took, I think, the top 20 positions from the local D110 series that they run there.
Yeah.
But maybe other competitions would count as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it has to be a championship. There could be a single one-off event, and I also think it would be cool to have those qualifying events open to anybody. If you're good enough to get top 4, top 6, top 8, whatever, end up making it through, but that's cool. And if, as happened with me for 2 of the years when the UK qualifiers were on, I was actually at the RCDC competition in Japan when it was happening. So I think it'd be cool if I can't make that one, maybe I can go to the one in the Netherlands or Sweden or something like that, and I can, I don't have to qualify from my home country. I could qualify from anywhere. Any of the
have to qualify, yeah.
Yeah, if I can go and make top 4 in another place, well, that's just as valid as far as I'm concerned.
Maybe even more so, because it definitely shows that you're very dedicated to getting to that position, and you're spending a lot of time and effort to get there.
It does also open the floodgates for somebody with a lot of money to just go to every competition and hope they qualify. But you'd have to hope people kind of helped, reined it in a little bit and was a bit more sensible.
Luckily, there's not too many people around that that can afford to travel the world to multiple events to try and make it through.
But I think, for me, I guess it's just about improving the overall standard, improve the standard of judging, improve the standard of driving. And it's like I say, I don't have anything against anyone that is new and just giving it a go at the Worlds. They were entitled to do that. There was nothing in the rules that said they can't do that. They took their chances fair and square, and some of them did pretty good as well. But to me, I think if using the UK for example, if the UK has, let's say, 8 drivers that are really high quality and earn their place, I don't think anyone should be picking teams because then you just end up with a popularity contest. But if somebody can go and especially if it's a single competition, but then you've got the problem of missing it, like I did, or a championship or whatever it is, just essentially somebody making sure that the entrants from your own country are as good as they can be, and whether that's a team captain, whether that's a championship organizer, or whatever it is, as long as it's not as long as it's fair and not for somebody's benefit. That's the important part. If you think of it as like a Ryder Cup in golf, they have a team captain that picks the team, and they might pick strategically to try and give them the best chance with average, positions, rather than picking somebody who maybe might on their day be really good, but might not be likely to hit their best performance on the day because of nerves, competition, and stuff like that. Because I think there's a danger of that then becoming a bit of a popularity contest if it's not respected and taken seriously. But also, I think it encourages a lot of support from the home country, especially if there's like a national cup or something in the Worlds as well. For most points overall or something, or highest positions overall, like an Olympics or like the Ryder Cup, where it's just about whoever wins the most battles or finishes the highest number of positions or whatever.
That could actually be pretty cool, because that means that you don't necessarily have to win the event to be the winning winning country, basically, or the winning team, or whatever.
And also, it encourages countries where maybe there's not many drivers going to come. Like the UK could get 20 spots tomorrow, but if it was limited to 8, well, they'll pick however it's decided, whether it's competition or captain or whatever, they'd pick the strongest 8 because they want to win the national cup. But for countries like Japan, where they only have 4, 5 drivers come over, well, maybe they bring a couple of extras to make sure they take that cup home as well. And so they bring stronger drivers. And a smaller country with not too many drifters. I don't know. Let's say Cyprus, something like that. Well, maybe they can encourage some more guys to come. That again, if it's their best 8 drivers, that to me is what I want. I want the top drivers from as many countries to be there, and I want less runs. I think it's got to be a limited number. That's what it ends up as. But having 300 drivers, it's too much when the standard is very variable. You've got the gold star top level drivers, and then you've got the new guy. And if you go from watching Hayato to new guy, I've seen it many times at the Worlds where there's a big crowd around the track. Everybody's watching, everyone's excited, and then there's a few guys that are lower level, and the crowd disappears and the atmosphere drops around the track. Whereas if you've just got gold star, gold star, gold star, I think for me, it'd make it a much cooler competition.
You also spend a lot of time watching if you go through 300 drivers. If you're on the live stream or even in the crowd on the track, you're not going to sit through, I don't know, like eight sessions or something on a day. It's just too much. You're going to pick the one session with someone or the guy you're expecting the most of. Maybe one of the Japanese drivers you really want to see do some battles. That's probably it. Or maybe just for the finals, and the rest of the time you're just chilling in the pits or driving on a practice track, which for the atmosphere indeed is not the best. What do you think different classes could do?
I think different classes could be really good because again, I think for me, if there's going to be different classes, there needs to be different judges for the classes, or potentially different. Depends on numbers, but it potentially needs to be different numbers. Different judges, because to avoid the whole judge burnout situation of watching 3,000 runs. But I think having I hate using these phrases, but they're the only ones I can think of. But amateur and pros, I think having the top level drivers would be wicked, and then having a lower competition for the guys that aren't quite at that level. But there'd have to be some sort of policing for that, because otherwise you just have a gold star level driver that is if Germany's got 30 top level drivers, well, they're only allowed 8, so one of the other guys just drops down and wins the amateur competition. I think there would need to be some sort of rule in place and some deciding factor, whether it's amount of time in the hobby or something. I also I've seen loads of cool suggestions on posts over social media about having like a stock class. So you can buy your $77 D5, but you can't touch it. It's just got to be entered as it is, with a basic entry level ESC motor and whatever. I think
it's something that came back in a lot of the comments that we got on Facebook as well. I think the ones that I've written down here were from Haroon, from Surian, and from Bauke, and all of them have something in their comments about having a very limited chassis or electronic spec class. So basically it becomes sort of like a stock class indeed. So they've been talking about blinky mode on the ESC. I saw some interesting back and forth on what blinky mode actually means. But basically it's a setting that's in your ESCs that turns off the.
It's essentially a default setting.
Timing,
Essentially like a flat setting, and the ESC blinks to show that you've got nothing set, so that the scrutineers can say, okay, he's in blinky mode. He's not secretly snuck some settings on. But I think
generally it's no boost timing, no turbo timing. That's usually the thing that that makes the blinky mode. But also besides that, they talked indeed about having different layouts. So I think Surian's group, it's called the Underpower Pros RC group.
Okay.
I think we talked about it a while ago already, because they sort of have this FR layout, so front motor wheel drive. With lower spec motors, less timing, to sort of make it sort of like a Corolla class, something underpowered and a bit more realistic. But that could be a fun class, or indeed having stock chassis, or maybe one particular chassis. Maybe there's just the one chassis for that year, and everyone has the exact same one, and then it just comes down to a tiny bit of tuning and mostly just driving and practicing. Which
One thing I did also, I've seen there's two other suggestions. One thing I think that would be very cool would be a team drift competition. So three or four cars, twinning as a team, not battling. That's very cool. That's been the thing in full size drifting for some time. It's something that I think I'd love to see in a proper competition, because it generally ends up looking the best because it's guys that know how to drift together, drifting, trying to show how good they can drift together, rather than trying to get one over the other guy in battles, or somebody who's trying to preempt something and making a mistake. So I think that's the best demonstration of how cool drifting can look. So I think that's a very cool way of doing it. Another thing that I thought of that would be very cool, and I think I can't remember the name of it, but I'm sure it's based in Finland. There's a class of grassroots grass track racing in, I'm sure it's Finland, where there is a budget of like €1,000 or €3,000, whatever it is. But at the end of any round or race or competition, you can walk up to any driver and they have to sell you their car for that amount of money. So nobody spends their time upgrading the chassis. It's an alternative to the stock class. If you said you can spend €250 on a chassis or €150 on a chassis or whatever it is, then anybody can buy it off you at any point. The danger with that means people don't do maintenance because they don't want to lose it. But it means people don't put the time and effort into the chassis itself. They put the time and effort into their driving. It's just an idea. It's not one I think would actually work that well. I think triple drift is a must for me. I think if I could have 300 drivers at a competition, I would have 100 pros, 100 amateurs, and then tripled class. That's the way I would end up wanting to do it, I think.
That would be pretty cool. It's also something that Haroon also mentioned, indeed, having the triple class.
Yeah.
And it's such a different mindset because, indeed, you're not trying to run away from each other.
No.
You're not trying to outsmart or outdo the other driver. You're actually supposed to sort of get to the same level, get to the same speed.
You've got to encourage your teammates, but also there's an element to it of style. Your bodies all need to look cool running together. They and maybe you open up the judging a little bit on that one. So it's you if you want to have rolling bodies, that's cool, but make it look cool. If you want to have high speed stuff, that's cool, but make it look cool.
Yeah, you can have your own style sort of infused into it, and
you
do something you want to do, but as long as you do it with the three cars at the same time, the same way, same speed.
But you end up sort of taking a risk that if that was the case, then maybe the judges won't like your style. That's kind of how judging works, and that's how drifting works. It's all about sort of declaring your style and being proud of it and pushing it forward and showing it off for other people to see.
Yeah, and then again, I see Barry mentioning this. He's one of the guys who's now with Tory Circuit, so who previously organized the D110 Worlds. I think you also saw Barry behind the button, sort of in the background at last year's Worlds. But as he also says, everything we're sort of talking about now, it has this saying, but basically it's just dreams, it's just suggestions, it's just ideas.
Yeah, totally.
The realistic part of organizing an event is obviously very different because you just have to do it with what's available to you. So we can talk about different surfaces, and I'm sure we will at some point, because maybe carpet is not the way to go anymore for the future. Maybe we need to sort of step it up to get something a bit more tricky. But then again, if you don't have a space that's available that has this particular floor, that's probably one of the reasons why we've had carpet in the previous years. Carpet is maybe the next best thing, and it's the same with the kind of judges, the kind of budget,
absolutely,
the amount of drivers, organizers, etc. Anything we can find to sort of organize this. It's always a challenge.
I mean, the reality is that that's exactly what this is. We've got downtime, so now's the time to have a discussion and open the floodgates of ideas, because some of them are going to be crazy, but some of them might inspire somebody to go ahead and look at something slightly differently, or maybe it ends up that I get involved with helping organize something or something along those lines. But because I've had this discussion with people, I get to see what other people think, and it's not just then my ideas going into it. I mean, exactly. I see Rory mentioned the reference to how RCDC do things, where most of the surfaces in Japan are hard surfaces, whether it's concrete or p-tile or whatever, and they do their competition on carpet to even it out. So in Europe, we're kind of the opposite, where the majority of tracks are carpet. or maybe not the majority, but a very high number. So maybe we should run on a hard surface. Well, like Tijs says, it's the tricky part is finding somewhere that will let you run on their surface, because the way I see it is, a World Championships couldn't happen at a regular club or a regular track. At Seoul RC,
Depending on
for
the
example,
amount of entries, of course.
That was not a big track, but we would have struggled with 45 drivers probably. That would have been a problem. And then Cookies can do officially up to like 48, but you could stretch that maybe a bit further. But then
it's going to be tight.
It's going to be tight, and there's limitations. Cookies is it's a funny shaped track where you can make some cool tracks, but you are limited on certain things there. And ideally, the Worlds, as it has been, is was a great competition, partly because just an empty hall, and it was built out however Michel wanted it to be. And some of the ways he did it were great. I can't remember. I think it was 2 years ago he made the switch to move things around, put the shops at the back, and it was much better that way because it meant everybody walked past the track. But yeah, I think it's a tricky one because there's so many different ways you can look at things. So I mean, for me, it's like looking at the big picture and what you want. And for me, I want it to be serious because it's a very serious competition in my mind. And I want everybody to take it seriously. I want the judges to take it seriously, the organisers, the drivers, everybody. And I want it to be something that is hard to win. It's not just the same guys winning all the time because their skill level is very high. I want it to be that they've still got to work hard to win it. Which I think there's a lot of drivers that have never gone to the Worlds that were probably good enough standard to finish very well.
For sure, definitely.
Maybe it's because they're not interested in competition, but maybe it's also because they just weren't interested in that competition. I mean, we saw it from I forget which year, was it 2015 or 2016? Most of the French guys stopped coming. It was like almost like an exodus. Just all of a sudden, they went from having 14, 15 guys in 2014 to
they used to be around with quite a big
2
team,
or 3. And that was essentially from. I mean, I don't know the details of it, and I might be speaking out of turn, but my understanding is that was just they didn't like how the competition was going, so they stopped coming.
Yeah, and then again, it's quite a big hurdle if you have to travel quite far. You have to spend quite a bit to be there for a whole week with accommodation and food and whatnot. So or even just taking off from work if it's not possible. It's quite a big undertake to get to an event of this level. But maybe there's also different countries, for example, that have drivers that are very, very good, but it's just very difficult to get here. Or maybe if no one from that country has ever been, they might have seen the pictures and they might have seen videos and they sort of know about it, but they don't have any first-hand experience. So maybe that's why they haven't showed up yet, even though they might have or someone from the country might have a very good chance. One other interesting point, and you also touched on it a little bit already, is the judging, because we also got quite a few comments about how the judging should be, and I think this is always one of the most controversial topics where everyone has a different opinion. We've also dedicated an entire episode to judging earlier this year. But one of the comments that I saw quite a few times, actually, I think it was Asif and Kurt from Side Sliders and a few other people that said something about the judges not sitting in the same spot, that sort of spread out over the track from different angles, basically. So nothing would be missed on the track. So any corner could be seen. And
for me, I would strongly disagree with that. Because
I think we also talked about this in the other episode.
Yeah, I mean the thing that you can say nothing would be missed, but then you've only got one pair of eyes that are good on each corner or each perspective, instead of 3 guys sat together that are when you're judging and you're setting up the track, you design the track so it's well viewed from the judge's position. If you look at any full-size competition, the judges sit next to each other. The thing for me is judges shouldn't talk. They should just make their mind up, and I mean, you can talk afterwards. You can just have friendly conversation between runs or whatever, but the judges shouldn't be discussing the runs themselves. I also think, having used it in Japan, I would like to see judging assistance in the form of cameras, replays. The details of that are very complicated because it all depends on the system. But
some corner marshals maybe somewhere.
yeah, some sub-judges as they call them in Japan. But the thing for me is judging is very hard to be very perfectly consistent for an extended period of time. And when you've got cameras that are either looking and showing your replay, so if you aren't sure if you saw what you think you saw, you can then watch a replay before you submit your score. But that does slow things down a lot. The YDS system from Yokomo, as we mentioned in the judging episode, has the potential to be very good, but their current system, YDS 1, has a problem in that you can basically game the system. Not cheat it, but there is a formula, and you can work out whether it values speed, line, angle, whatever, as the number one priority. So I've seen it before where people just bomb it with no angle, but because the speed is so high, they get all the points. And so that system, the system would need to be managed so that sort of stuff goes away, so that it actually rewards what the judges want it to reward and not something else entirely. And
it's also only really useful with qualifying, because in battles you have different criteria you're judging on anyway.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, for judging battles, it's good because it lets you see if a car goes over a line. Top down over a corner. Did that car just creep over the inside line? Then you get to see that, and it's a definitive yes or no. Not maybe like it was close, because that's where the problems that a lot of drivers have with judging comes in, when a judge appears to make a different decision for two different runs that looked identical to spectators, where sometimes they're not identical when you're up in the judge's seat, but sometimes it depends on the judge's mood, whether they've had lunch, whether they've got a good night's sleep, whether their child was crying all night or whatever. And I think it's better that you just have something that says this was out of bounds, this wasn't out of bounds. That's kind of what I want the criteria for. And for RCDC, their rulebook states that on corners you have marker zones that are 10 centimeters wide, and you get points deducted depending on how far out you are. If you're in the first box, you get no points deducted. If you're in the next box, you get X number, whatever it is for that particular layout, depending on the number of corners and stuff.
It's sort of what we used to have a couple of years ago on a bunch of different tracks.
That's what I want the computer assistance for, that just says they scored -10, or they scored -5, or whatever it is. There's no doubt then, because then the judge can just focus on style, proximity, and all these sorts of things. And I don't necessarily want the judging to be done by the computer, but I want the computer to be there for the judges to reference. Because sometimes like I say, there are ways that you can people work out how to beat the system essentially, and they work out that if they do something, they'll score highly, but the judges will then be able to see. Because I mean, when I used the YDS system in Japan, it was 70%. I think it was 70% or 70 points went to the YDS system and 30 points went to the judges, which meant usually you had to give somebody a 0 for them to get no points. So there was a few times when people did something that was very dishonest or not as the judges wanted, and the only way to penalise that person was to give them a 0, which they didn't actually do anything that the rulebook said they could have a 0. So you just had to let their score go through, which is not really what you want when you're judging. You want a system that lets you override it and go, actually, no, this is
just a second pair of eyes, basically. Just so you
essentially
have a better view of what's
you could
going
also
on.
have it with individual people sat on each corner, but the problem with that is you need a lot of people and a lot of volunteers to do a very boring job for a long period of time that also need to do it to a very high standard.
Yeah, and the way they do it in racing probably doesn't work, because then it might be a little bit biased. Because in racing, what you have usually is when your session is done, basically, either a race or qualifying or practice or whatever, you put your car in the pits and you go straight back out on track to sort of marshal each of the corners. But it's not very precise. If a car flips onto its roof just in front of you, just flip it back on its wheels. That's it.
Yeah.
You don't have to really count any scores or pay very close attention to what's going on. So even if people are doing a good job, it might sort of give the idea that it could be biased, which a lot of people probably won't like very much.
Yeah.
Maybe going back to the original point, I think if you have, and I think this is the reason why these comments come up, if you have judges who are doing multiple days in a row of multiple hours of judging, it's bound to be inconsistent.
Yeah.
Also, if a track layout isn't designed very well and there's maybe some crap on the track or a corner that's angled in a particular way that you cannot see what's going on, I
Yeah.
think the reason why you get these issues is more indeed the track design, the placement of where the judges are sitting, and indeed just the long hours that make it inconsistent, that make you miss stuff.
Yeah. I mean,
I think,
inevitably, most layouts are going to have a blind spot somewhere, but that's where you need another judge.
yeah, or make that a less important part of the track.
Yeah.
You know, if you run a medium line there, then whatever, right? Like if there's no points to be gained in that particular spot, then nobody cares. There's no way to really cheat
and
it.
I think it works out that, like I say, the sub-judge system in RCDC works really well, but you need people that are so dedicated to the cause that they can do a mind-numbing job. That's less interesting than doing the full judging because they're just staring at a corner and then holding up a card or pressing a button on the tablet or whatever it is.
Yeah, and that's where less drivers comes in as well, because then the sessions are much shorter. There's less runs to be judged, which makes it in the end a lot easier to be consistent.
Yeah, and it also means people get more practice because there's more track time available. So they end up with a higher standard, better setups, more confidence.
Yeah.
And I think it's, like I say, I mean, these are all just ideas, but for me, I think if we could have something where, I mean, the RCDC competition is the best competition I've done. The regular annual RCDC competition in Nagoya is better even than the World Cup that I judged, which was run by the same people, but it was done in a way the way they do the annual competition just almost perfect. The only thing I would personally change is I would move it from carpet because it encourages burnout style super fast drifting, which hopefully next time they'll get rid of, but it's very difficult to get rid of. But I think, I mean, what we've had some other suggestions sent in, haven't we? Or have we sort of covered them already?
Well, like I said in the beginning when we started about this topic, a lot of the suggestions were all about specific details of the competition the way it is, basically. So changing something slightly in the way they're judged, maybe adding a class or maybe adding like a small technical rule. But what I find super interesting, and a few people commented sort of on that same level as well, is the whole format in itself. Because what I find a reason to go to the D110 Worlds, for example, is, or it's two things really. One is the level of competition. So it is a world championship. When I go there, I want to perform well. You know, I know I'm not at the same level as some of the, like you say, gold star drivers, but at least I want to give it a shot and see how far I get. So that part of it is really competition focused, and that's where all of these suggestions about changing judging, changing technical rules, changing bit of the competition format all really comes into play. The other reason why I personally, but I think most people who go to D110 Worlds want to go is because it's fun. You want to hang out with
definitely.
Some of the friends you haven't seen for a long time. You want to meet as many people as you can from the RC drifting family, as a lot of people call it, from all over the world. And this is the one place where everyone gets together and where you can hang out, have a drink, have a barbecue, mess around on the practice tracks, share setups and whatnot. But maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea to sort of separate the two. To have like a proper world championship with just the best of the best drivers, sort of make it into an entertaining show as well. I think RCDC has done that in the past, or maybe the what was it called, the Formula Drift Shift, where they have a live stream with a good commentator, where they have less drivers, so they can spend a lot more time on building characters of these drivers, having some background information. So if you're watching this live stream, even as someone who's not super into RC drifting, but maybe you're just into cars, maybe you're just into RC in general, you're a total outsider of specific details of the competition, but it's still interesting to watch because you're learning who everyone is. You get to pick a favorite. Maybe there's someone in there that has a particular character you can.
They're not just popping up on live stream for 3 laps. You see them walk up onto the podium, do 3
Yeah.
laps, and then walk away. And that's all you know about them, apart from maybe a few words that the commentator says.
Yeah.
I think it's good to sort of invest a bit more, and also, I mean, that's the stuff that helps with
With
not
budgets, with sponsorships, with all that
you know,
kind of stuff
if
too.
somebody needs some support to get from a faraway country, then that's the kind of thing where they can get a bit of promotion for a sponsor.
Yeah.
And that helps them get some money to get there, or support to get there, whether it's, you know, not necessarily just financial, but maybe you know, visa related and things like that. And I think it's
Yeah.
good. I think the other thing that, I mean, the other alternative that people have sort of mentioned to me before is that you could have essentially the Worlds as we had it, but you can have 300 drivers, but they're not all competing. You know, there's a big practice track for the competitors, but maybe there's only 64 competitors, and everyone else is on other tracks just having fun, spending money in the shops and supporting those businesses, and also partying and enjoying themselves and whatever.
Yeah.
And also supporting the event and cheering people on and being there to support their friend and encourage them, or
Yeah.
help them and fix them stuff when it's broken.
Yeah. So my dream scenario would be, for example, to have a series. So it's a championship series with, you know, a small amount of drivers, maybe 30 to 50 drivers, maybe 64 to make it a
Yeah.
nice bracket, but it might already be too much. And then maybe have the final event. So have like 3 different rounds on 3 different locations. Maybe have like a separate class that sort of is like a cedar class. So you have you know, new talents and stuff coming up, and if anyone wants to have a taste of how it is to do a series like this, you can sort of get into that but not be on the main show. And then have a final event where everyone's invited. It's basically just a week-long festival of RC drifting, and then at the end of that week you have the final round of this competition that everyone has been following already on social media and live stream. And you know, you got to learn who's good, who's not. You
Yeah.
know, have a history of competition for everyone, even if you don't know them personally. But you've gotten to follow them already for a while, so you have probably a favorite. And then it's awesome to be able to watch that trackside,
Yeah.
and then in the meantime have that week of partying and stuff, even though you're not even competing, but you might feel more connected because you've already
Yeah,
seen the show.
I mean, and it wouldn't be that tricky to do, because I mean, it sounds, you know, if you initially say that, it sounds like it's a huge commitment and people maybe won't be able to afford to do it and stuff. But if you've just flipped that around and make it so the championship is not so much of a championship, but it's all the qualifying events. Actually, well, you know, maybe I'll go over to Denmark to Cookies for the qualifying event over there, because it'll be a fun event. And maybe I get to go later in the year and go to one in Sweden or Netherlands or wherever it is. So I've done 2 or 3 in a year, and then we have the World's finals essentially. But you've already met a bunch of people along the way, and some guys bring their friends along. You know, ideally guys that are into RC drifting and not just party animals or whatever. But you could do it along those lines, where it spreads it out over the year and everybody gets to know each other. Because, like I say, I finished 9th instead of 8th. I can't qualify from the UK, so I'm going to try again somewhere else. And then I meet everybody at that event, and then it just sort of spreads it out and gets people connected again. Because that's the important part, really. It's catching up with people you don't get to see on a regular basis. And I think for me, it's just mostly about improving the overall standard and getting the commitment from, and not, because the one thing that really disappoints me more than anything when I'm at the Worlds is when I see the guys that freely admit that they're there to smoke weed and drink and party, and they're not really there for the competition. And the guys that don't show up, I was really disappointed to see guys from the UK that just didn't show up last year. They turned up and then bailed on the competition because it wasn't what they thought they were going to be, and they'd taken spots that other people were desperate for, and they had to miss out. And then I've seen it before as well, with guys that have disappeared to Amsterdam for 2 days, and like, come on, you know, that's not what you're here for. If you're here for that, you could have just gone on holiday, saved yourself the hassle.
Yeah, that's where the idea of this sort of drift festival party week comes in, where
you
know, you're not actually competing, but you're still having the same amount of fun you would have otherwise, but without having without taking the time that from judges, taking the time from the organizers and stuff to sort of set something up for you to have a million practice sessions, to have this track to be open for, you know, a full week from the morning till late in the evening, to sort of be marshaled to keep the track nice, etc. You can still have the same amount of fun and just make it much easier on the organizers and on the few people that are actually serious about winning this competition. And like I mentioned, to make this interesting for outsiders too, because one thing that maybe doesn't look like it if you're at the Worlds, but one thing that this sport still struggles with is not that many people are into RC drifting if you compare it to
No.
a lot of other RC car disciplines, crawlers, buggies, etc. There's so many more people who are doing it. So having some entertaining show to sort of get people excited about RC drifting, and then
Definitely.
maybe being able to come and look at it at some point and
actually,
participate. Yeah.
one of the things that is really good that Vicky did at the Cross Games event that I went to last year was he had rental cars for random guys. I mean, that event was at I'm probably going to get the definition wrong, but it's like a hobby show. So there was a lot of gaming, like computer gaming stuff there. There was a lot of craft stuff there, model making stuff. We were in a hall with plane enthusiasts, model train enthusiasts, RC boats, all that kind of stuff. And so there's thousands of people walking around the show that are into hobbies that are similar but not quite the same. And he just had some basic drift packages there that were, I can't remember the price, but it was super cheap for like 10 minutes. He had a team of guys that were just running that all weekend, and they constantly had a queue for the entire weekend because everyone wants to try. If you can have a little practice track that's dedicated with some basic cars, you'll get a lot of random passers by if it's at an event like that that want to give it a go. And
it's how we used to get people excited for this RC drifting, because especially here in the Netherlands, when Michel was running the D110, or back then it was also RC drift events.
Yeah,
there used to be these demos all over the place, and it's one of the most frequently asked questions, like, "Hey, can I have a go?"
yeah.
And then you sort of have to explain, like, no, all these cars are people's own projects that
They're
they
really
spend
expensive and
hundreds or to thousands of euros into,
yeah.
and you cannot wreck it on the track. But they did have some rental cars, and I think pretty much everyone who's still at least in the Dutch RC drift scene, they know RC drifting from coming to these demos,
Yeah.
from having seen videos from these demos, having heard it from someone and looking up the forum or the page or something like that. And that's the way they sort of got into this hobby.
Yeah, I think
and also indeed for budgets and for sponsors, it would be great. And I think it was RCDC who had like a bank or something as their main sponsor for a while.
They've had investment groups, they've had banks, they've had telecommunications companies, because it's an incredibly professional event in a very public area with a very big audience, and so it attracts proper sponsors. And I think the reality is it's a professionalism that attracts those sponsors. They have people that are on the committee that they're not RC Drift people. They're there for promotion and marketing purposes. And they have people on the committee that are from a financial background who are there to draw in sponsors and help with deals and spend the money appropriately and responsibly. And it means that the business of it runs perfectly. Like I don't know if I could say they're profitable. I don't know their actual situation, but they certainly aren't wasting money, and they certainly aren't spending money on things they don't need to have. Even last year they had the fancy lighting over the driver's stand, but the reality is they actually needed a stand anyway, so they just rented some cheap lights. And I think it was a friend managed to set it all up, but it was done in a professional way with a proper contract and all of that stuff. And when I judged it, I had a contract and I had responsibilities, and they won't accept that you're not performing. And if you're not performing, they'll just ask you not to judge. And somebody else, they had when I was there, they had replacement judges lined up in case one of us got sick, or in case one of us missed a plane, or whatever it was. And it's the kind of thing that, sure, that's not that hard to do, but we think of it. I mean, I probably wouldn't think of doing that.
No, that's just a case of setting up a good team, I think.
Yeah,
and maybe that's maybe that's what's going to happen now, because I think a lot of people will be missing these kind of events. And I've heard from multiple sides. I know the guys from Tory, they're still thinking about putting on an event like this in 2021 or 2022. I've had some questions from some of the German guys that are looking into or maybe organizing something like that. I know you and I have talked about it quite a few times already. What could we do?
Yeah.
Where could we help? So maybe this is also a good call for anyone thinking they want to organize something like this, to sort
Well,
of
I mean,
get together and ask
I was
around
going to
and
say
create this team.
to just sort of be direct about it. If anyone wants to talk to me about putting on an event or wants my either assistance, help, or input or whatever it is, just ask. For me, if it's going to be a benefit to the hobby, I'm game. I want to do what I can to improve things, and if I can be a part of it, then I'd rather be a part of it than and try and influence a way that I believe is right than watch other people go a different route that maybe isn't for me. I've been around long enough, I've judged enough competitions, and I've been part of the organisation of enough competitions that I believe I've got a good understanding of what makes a good event and a good understanding of what ruins and kills the fun or whatever it is. I'm happy to help anyone. I am, in all honesty, I am looking at maybe organising some competition next year. I think for me personally, as we mentioned at the top of the show, with the new baby coming, it probably is the wrong year for me to do it. But I'm looking at my options.
Yeah.
If I do, I'll be looking to put a team together. I certainly don't want to do it on my own. I don't have the patience or the time, frankly, to do everything on my own. So I'd be looking to work with other people anyway, and I'd rather it was an international team rather than just my buddies. As much as some of those are international, but I'd like it to be a collaboration, and I don't want it to just be James's competition. I want it to be a competition that is popular with people from all different countries with different styles, backgrounds, everything like that. I mean, my ideal situation would be that we have a competition that moves every year. It's not in the same location and not even in the same country. I think it's good if we have. I also think, in all honesty, I think it should be called a European Championship, not a World Championship. Until we're, if it's attracting people from all over the world, then yes, it's cool. That's a World Championship. And I'm sure maybe some of the guys from America might come and things like that, but most of the people are going to be from Europe if it's held in Europe, which to the current audience of this channel, it's mostly Europe that we're do. But I think we can definitely all have people that work together, and I think it needs to be a reasonably large group of people. Not necessarily making the decisions. That can be a reasonably small group, 5 to 10 guys making decisions, voting on things. That kind of thing is a good thing.
Just a core group, but having a much broader network that's involved is great.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned about the lights at RCDC, it was a friend of a friend that maybe had a business and could
but
arrange
like
something.
a completely solid, reliable guy, not just like, my friend Dave will come and help us, and then Dave doesn't show up. It needs to be the proper guy.
Yeah. But funny enough, like from most of the people I know in the RC drifting world, I have no idea what they're doing for their daily job.
I see it quite regularly, and actually one of the ways I find that out is when it's somebody's birthday on Facebook, and I click on their page to send them a message, and I'm like, oh, that's their job. I didn't know that.
Yeah, or if you have like a random question on Facebook or Instagram, and someone replies like, "Oh, I can help you with this. I know this. I'm doing this for a day job, and I can help you out straight away with a lot of expertise."
Yeah,
and I think you would be surprised with how helpful it could be to have this big network that we all share, sort of be involved and arrange certain little things.
And I mean, let me see if I can put something quickly. One of the things that I think people don't realize is how many people are involved in some competition. I've got a picture here. Let me do it.
In the meantime, clearly we're still reaching worldwide. I see someone from Seattle, Washington, in the chat. So hey there. So a bit more inconvenient time frame for someone watching from the US, I'm sure, but who knows? Maybe they're watching at work.
I don't think I'm going to be able to find the photo I was looking for, but I've got a staff photo from the RCDC event. I can't find it, but it's literally like 20 people. And some of those, there's people that their entire job is registration. They sit at the doors for the entire week, and anybody that needs to get their tires, their sticker pack, whatever, they hand that out. But then anyone who has a question or needs help can go to them, and that's their job.
And that's still just a core staff group, I'm sure, because there might be a lot of other people involved that do little things and just preparing this
absolutely
event.
Even just the tires being prepared, that's a very serious job that somebody gets involved with, and they have a full-time scrutineer, they have a full-time MC even, and then you've got the live stream crew, you've got the YDS crew, you've got it's a huge team. And I think in reality any competition that happens that's serious needs at least 15 or 20 guys working on it. I mean, how Michel did what he did with the small crew that he had, I think is frankly miraculous and ridiculous at the same time.
Definitely. And then most of that stuff was just during the event, but imagine all the prep work. I don't think too many people were involved in that, so that makes it even more impressive that you can do so much with so little amount of people. Basically just the family, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the more people you can get involved, the better. As long as it's not 1,000 chefs trying to cook together, because you're always going to want with people going different routes. As long as there is a core team that make the decisions, and then everybody else just chips in and helps, and they're volunteers. And I mean, in an ideal world, those volunteers don't compete, and that's how it works in Japan. The volunteers and the staff don't compete. They're judges, they're sub-judges, they have their jobs, but they don't compete. They're not doing their job and then running to get a qualifying run in.
But even to start out, I mean, I can imagine that we probably there's quite a few people in this community that have a lot of IT experience that could set up a scoring system or a website or automatic registration. I know Bauke's been playing around with that for a while, and I think there's also some other guys that maybe help Michel with the scoring and whatnot. There might be people who are very good indeed, like you say, with marketing, with finance, with graphic design. You can all have those people make stuff up front that you can use to sort of promote the event and set up templates and whatnot you can use throughout the year to do all kinds of things.
And also somebody can just be responsible for a job. A graphic designer can take care of designing the stickers and then having them made and delivering them to the event. And that's just something that the rest of the organisers don't have to think about. It's just taken off their hands. And if you've got 50 guys just doing these little tiny jobs that for them, because of their expertise, is no big deal, it soon becomes a much more manageable project. And suddenly somebody can focus on the actual competition, the actual event, and the details that matter to make the event great. And they're not stuck on trying to find someone who can bring them 300 chairs. Because their original company that was going to do it has bailed or whatever,
just have someone be the chair guy and then
exactly
have them arrange all of that.
If they need help, then they need somebody to help them. But if they can just take care of it, then that's ideal. But I think we've probably waffled on for long enough now. But and like I say, these are just ideas. In reality, any competition that happens is a good thing. It doesn't matter if it doesn't follow any of these ideas.
Oh, for sure. I would be happy with just having a couple smaller but still international events that we could sort of link together with a bit of a group.
Yeah, and for me, if I could do a few competitions, it's better than doing one. So I think in an ideal world, what I'd like to see happen is a few guys put on an event, and then the strongest event is the one that attracts the most people and grows to be the biggest. Because I think timing is always a problem. I think budget is always a problem. Location is always a problem, and it's very difficult to nail all of those things. And I think if everybody helps everybody out, even if it's if there's 3 teams that are building a different event, well, if they still help each other and they go to each event, then everything grows for everybody, and everybody can learn from other people, and things just evolve in a positive way, and that's what we really need. I think if we could just have, I think what probably needs to happen as well is anyone who is organising a competition needs to give a lot of notice, particularly for international stuff. It's very difficult if you say, oh, next week we've got this competition in Belgium or wherever. Not many people are going to be able to travel to that because they haven't booked the time off work, or they don't have the budget available or whatever. If somebody says, okay, next May this competition is happening, people have time to think about that, and they have time to plan, and they might not have the details ready yet. But then the flip side of that is people don't need to wait until they're 100% committed to doing the competition to announce it, because otherwise you'll have somebody planning to travel and then they turn down other events, and that's a problem.
Yeah, something I know a few people that have been doing is set up like a collective calendar or an agenda.
Yes.
Sort of put events into, and then you can sort of cherry pick the ones you want to go to, but at least you know what's going on when, and hopefully indeed like far in advance, so you can book tickets and book hotels cheap, and sort of get a group together, because that always helps. If you have to travel by yourself and have to spend on hotels and all that stuff by yourself, it's probably a lot more expensive than if you go with a bit of a group.
Yeah. As I say, if anyone wants any help, just hit me up. I'm sure Tijs is the same. We're happy to help
Definitely.
together as a team or individually. Also, my plan, if I'm going to look at anything, I'm going to start thinking about it probably October. I think for next year, I need to get the baby out safely and deal with new dad life, and then I can think about next year and see if it's going to be a possibility. And if I can't do something next year, I'll probably look at something the following year. I've had a few requests to start looking at this quite seriously, so, and it's something I'd like the idea of being a part of. But if I'm helping somebody else instead of running it all myself, I'm perfectly happy with that. As long as I can
Even
be a
for small
positive
stuff,
influence.
right? Like
Yeah,
even for small things, if
anything
you
at
want
all.
some simple input, or just
Quick
want to
question.
know if we know
Yep.
someone.
Or if anybody wants, the only thing I will say is if anybody wants free stuff from manufacturers, don't ask me for it, because they generally don't do it, and I'll save you the time. Sometimes they will, but you kind of have to prove yourself first, and I'm certainly not going to be the guy that asks for free stuff from people. It's a bit rude, in my opinion.
It's also like maybe one of the least important things to set up an event.
Definitely.
Surprises.
Yeah.
You can make something so simple, so cheap, or maybe just even save a little bit of budget and buy some prizes.
Even tires is not difficult. If the competition is in place and you need tires, then yes, you can probably get a sponsorship deal with somebody, even if it's me or RC Boss or whoever it is. We can do a discount on tires. If you just want free stuff, either ask directly or whatever. But it's that's the one thing that people setting up competitions often ask me is, how do I get free tires? And the answer is, you generally don't. You buy the tires, and then maybe the following year when you've had a successful competition, then you maybe get sponsorship.
Yeah, set it up first. Make sure you have like a good rule book, a good setup. Have some drivers already signed up, and then maybe.
And the reality
time
is,
to think of prices.
for stuff like tires that you need a lot of, you just incorporate the cost into the entry fee. You know that the tires are going to cost you €12 or whatever. If you can't get a discount, then you add €12 to your competition price.
On a big event like this, 10-12 euros is not going to make the difference anyway.
Definitely.
Especially if people are spending hundreds on accommodation and travel, and
and it's and they're committing to something that they're very serious about. They, if 12 euros is the difference, then they probably don't have money for the food for the week. So anyway, that's it for this week and
a good point then,
this season, I guess. So yeah, as we said at the start of the show, this is going to be the last episode for a couple of months while I deal with the baby situation. And we'll be back late summer, early autumn, something like that, depending on how life settles down for me. Hopefully my internet will have fixed itself by then. I'll have less of the glitches, although it looks like it's been pretty constant recently, but definitely the first half of the show, sketchy.
It probably isn't too bad. We haven't seen many comments come through, so I hope it's all good. And I think in the meantime, even if we're not broadcasting anything for a couple months, then feel free to still share stuff. Send us any news, anything to keep us up to date. Even if we don't share anything on the podcast, I'm super happy to share anything else just on a regular post on social media or anything like that.
And also, I'm interested in stuff. Show me.
Yeah, definitely.
Show me what you're working on. Show me what you've been to, and especially when all the tracks start to open, share what you've been up to. It's just cool to see.
Yeah, because I'm 100% sure that I don't know half the tracks that are in Europe or anywhere else, and I'd love to learn.
I definitely
maybe even visit sometimes.
I was going to say I definitely need some more tracks to visit next year.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Maybe a pacecast on the road. That would be cool.
But thanks, guys, and we'll catch you later in the year.
Yeah, next time.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching.